Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Utterly Unscripted. I'm joined today by Joni Halabi. Hi, Joni. Thanks for being with us.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Bessie.
It's an absolute pleasure. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience? Tell everybody what you do and why are you here?
Sure, I'd love to. So, hi everyone. My name is Joni. I kind of lead two lives these days. So, I am a web developer. I've been working with computers for more than 20 years. I currently work in higher education for Georgetown University. But I also am, well, not but I am a single mother. I am a single mother by choice to an amazing almost 4-year-old. Her birthday is at the end of this month.
Oh,
And I conceived her via a donor, a sperm donor. And because of her, she really inspired my debut picture book called Sweet Little You.
sweet little
So that
you.
is kind of my other professional life as a very, very, very new author. So I've been very recently exploring the world of self-publishing and being a children's author and everything that comes with that.
Fantastic. So, Sweet Little You, we were just talking about it a minute ago. It's released on August 1st, but it is available
Yes.
everywhere at the moment as a pre-order, right?
Correct. Yeah. Everywhere where books are sold.
Okay.
You can look me up on Goodreads and it'll give you like a whole big list of where the book is available right now. So yeah, it's available
Okay.
for pre-order.
Fantastic. We will put a link in the show notes.
Okay.
So what I want to talk to you about, you've got so many things. When I read the introduction, I had a little one sheet that was given to me by my producer. And I was like, this person is going to be amazing to talk to. We all have these double lives, triple lives. Everybody seems to have that, but you are fully embracing it. And you're out there full force doing what you love, obviously, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. Where did you start?
Exactly.
So you started as a computer, as I think in the one sheet was a nerdy life. You had a nerdy life. That's what you say.
Yes, I have always had a nerdy life.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up in the 80s without, like, this is before the internet became
The
ubiquitous and
internet.
just in everybody's homes. But I did have this standalone machine. I had an Apple IIc when I was younger, and my first programming experience was on that Apple IIc.
Wow.
I had a manual and I was learning BASIC. Believe it or not, it is no longer working, but I still have that Apple IIc in my basement.
Amazing.
So it's a pet project of mine to get it running again. But yeah, I've been coding on and off since I was about 7.
Okay.
And I went to school eventually. I went to school for computer science. And at the time, they didn't have all of the programs in web programming that you have now in universities. So computer science was straight up application programming.
Uh-huh.
You learn C++, you learn Java, you learn to make these like big object oriented it's a programming methodology, but these very big applications. And I found the big application aspect of computer science actually a little bit boring, like because at that time I was in college in the mid 90s, and this is right when the internet was like really ramping up and getting going, and I was so excited about it. And it was my first experience with the internet. Like my first email address was my college address.
Uh-huh.
And I was so enamored with it. I ended up, like, after classes, I started teaching myself web programming. So in class, I would be learning all of these application languages, but at night I'd be teaching myself HTML. And then when CSS came out, I started learning before CSS came out.
Oh, wow.
I would teach myself CSS and JavaScript, and I made my own web page, and it was goofy and silly at the time, but I loved every minute of it, and it ended up turning into a career for me.
Why not? Why not? I remember back in those days, what was it that we had? We had GeoCities, I think. I'm probably in the same age group as you, I think. So when internet
You're like,
came
she
to
goes fix my
town.
coffee, yes.
My first computer, I actually was just talking about this with someone today who has grown up with computers their whole life. I'm literally double their age. And he just could not comprehend that the first computer that I had was $4,000 or something. It was a big clunky machine, and everything in Australia is more expensive anyway. But this was like one of the first PC computers, and I needed to have it. I was in high school. So the high school said, look, you really should have a computer. Until then, all I had was a typewriter.
Oh my gosh. That was how
So
you learned to type.
yeah, that's
On
how
a
I
typewriter.
learned, on a typewriter. Yeah. That was how my mother learned, and her mother, they all learned the same way. And so we all just, that's how we learned to do it. And it was fun. I loved having a typewriter. I actually started writing short stories when I was younger with the typewriter. And then my world changed. I got an electric typewriter.
Oh, right.
Oh, it was
I remember those.
amazing.
We had the electrics in school. Yeah.
Fantastic. My life changed. And then I couldn't stop. I was on a roll. But then starting high school, they said you need to have a computer. So I needed to have, back in those days, it was Microsoft Works. It wasn't even
Yes.
Word yet. Yeah.
Yeah, very well.
Jody and I are taking a stroll down memory lane.
Yes, we are. Oh my gosh.
One day people will listen to this and think, oh, those people lived when the internet was invented.
Mm-hmm.
My first modem was actually was an internal. It was an internal modem that had to be plugged into the phone line. It was a 128.8K modem. Young kids will never know the pain of having to wait for internet to load. It was fun times, though. We really appreciate things now, I think, a little more because we've had to go through that. And now I can also relate a little bit to my parents, particularly my mother, or even my grandparents, when they tell me stories about how their lives have changed over the years and what they did before television, before telephones, and I met my great grandmother even, and she, to think about that, she was alive before the first passenger flight ever took off. To something that we take for granted today. She was alive when they invented planes, when they decided to take these first commercial passenger flights. Amazing.
Yeah, my mom has told me the story of, so she grew up in Beirut, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was similar in the States at the time, but her house was the only house in the neighborhood with a telephone. So if anybody
Oh,
needed to like make a phone call, they would like ring her
uh-huh.
house, and then like if the school needed to get in touch with somebody, they would like call her house, and then my grandmother would just be like, "All right, I'm gonna just take this message," and it's amazing now. Like every human has a phone. There's no like I
Or
grew up in the
more.
age where like you had a phone in every household, and you'd call and ask for somebody. Now nobody even asks like, "Hey, can I
No.
speak to blah blah blah?" Because you're just calling into somebody's cell phone.
Yeah, you're immediately connected.
It's
Everybody is
amazing.
on that little leash called an iPhone or an Android or or whatever. It literally is a leash. It connects you to the whole entire world. I actually remember when the first cell phones started out here in Australia. Now the US, they had them a lot earlier than us. They were things that we would see on TV, the big briefcase things that people would carry around with them. We sort of missed all of that. We had car phones for a little while, and then we had the first cell phones, which were these big clunky machines. Even my 12-year-old niece, I try to explain to her some of the things that I've seen, and she doesn't believe it. Or she thinks I'm a dinosaur. She thinks
Yeah, I so I grew up without cable, and we had maybe like 6 channels. And I
uh-huh.
tried explaining this to my daughter, and she is growing up in a world where she uses the iPad. Like she can go to the iPad and go to YouTube Kids, and she knows how to
Uh-huh.
find her shows. And they're on demand. And I told her, like, when I was your age, we had to turn the TV on, and if I wanted to watch a show, I had to wait for a certain time, and like her eyes just bugged out. What are you talking about? That's
Yeah.
not how this works.
You had to wait a whole week most of the time. If you wanted to see something, it was on once a week. Come on. Yeah, there was no binging of any kind back then. Yeah, they'll never understand. So that's where you started out, computers. You're responsible for some of the things that we take for granted today.
I guess so. Yeah, it's been quite the ride. Like I have told my parents, much to their chagrin, all of the technical things that I learned in college are really no longer applicable to the web. Like
No.
HTML has turned over a few times. Like all of these languages, they've deprecated so many of their functions and their new functions. And like college was amazing for learning how to deal with technology and learning how to learn the languages, because in this industry, it changes so fast. That is the real skill you need. Like,
yes.
And I tell younger developers too, you can learn the language, but you need to learn how to learn the language. Like that is the real skill.
Absolutely. And it is a language. I mean, I've looked at some of the stuff myself. My nephew is really interested in coding and game development and things like that. And I feel bad because I can't help him. I have no idea. I have no idea. I love languages, but that is one language that I just don't seem to be able to, I've never caught on, I guess. And he rattles these things off and I just think, where do you get this from? How do you know these things? But it is a language. It's learning something. Well, I speak another language. I don't only speak English. I guess it must be similar. Is it more mathematical, maybe? Does it use a different part of your brain, do you think?
It really does. So I guess it really uses that more like analytical part of your brain. I wouldn't necessarily call it mathematical, but it is definitely very logic based. So computers, and I teach this, and I occasionally teach an introduction to programming class. And one of the first things I teach my students is computers will do exactly what you tell them.
Yeah,
to a T, and sometimes to a fault. And there's this great exercise that I do. I don't know if you've ever heard of the peanut butter and jelly lesson.
No.
But it's this great exercise where I bring in, I have to be a little careful now with peanut allergies, but I bring in all of the ingredients for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I tell the students, like, listen, pretend I am a computer. I want you to tell me exactly how to make this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So inevitably they'll say, like, okay, well, take 2 slices of bread. I'll take 2 slices of bread. And then they'll say, scoop the peanut butter and put it on the bread. But they don't necessarily tell me to use a knife to do that. So
right.
I take the peanut butter in my hand, smear it over the bread, and they're looking at me like, but you're supposed to use a knife. And I'm like, exactly. Right. I'm a computer. I don't know that. You have to tell me this. So it's incredibly logic based, and you have to think step by step by step. And you also have to think about anything that could possibly go wrong. We call them edge cases. So any path that might be a little bit off that a user might take, like on a web page, you might expect a user to find information by going through the navigation menu, but maybe they'll end up scrolling down the page and going into the footer and trying to find a piece of information there, and then maybe
you've been watching
search.
My computer.
You never
usage.
really know what like actual real people are doing. Yeah. So I guess going back to your question, like learning a programming language, it uses that like very analytical part of your brain, whereas like speaking another language, and I don't speak any other languages fluently, but I'm in the process of learning Spanish, and
Oh, wow.
Please don't
Great.
ask me to say anything in Spanish right now because I'm very nervous about it. But I find that that uses a totally separate part of my brain because
Uh-huh.
not everything in a spoken language is logic based.
Mm.
So you learn Spanish, and there are lots of rules, and there are grammar rules, and you follow the rules. But then there are things like the gender of nouns.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
la manzana, the apple. Okay, I know that apple uses the word for apple uses the feminine article, but
Mm-hmm.
why? Why is an
Yes.
apple feminine? Why is
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
yeah? And
Italian,
it's these
French,
whys
they're
that
the
kind of keep
same.
you. Oh yeah, yeah. German has three articles, so you can have
Mm-hmm.
masculine for nouns, masculine, feminine, or neutral. And it's why have these been assigned? And I
Yes.
also
Why
find it
is
like when
it?
I'm
Yeah.
trying to teach my daughter. Oh, sorry, yeah. Like I find this in English, like why when my daughter is trying to like use words, like she speaks very, very well, but grammar rules, she tries to apply logic to the grammar rules. So when she speaks in past tense, she'll say, "Okay, well, I play right now. I played
Mm.
before." But she'll try to apply that to like an irregular verb. So she'll say, "Well, I eat now. I eated before instead of I
Uh-huh.
ate." I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I see where your brain went,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you can't use the logic part of your brain with these spoken languages because they don't always follow all those rules.
No. And the rules are, yeah, I know. I've been trying to learn French with the app Duolingo. I'm not sure if you know the app. It's great.
That's how I'm learning Spanish.
It's great. It's
So
a
great.
fantastic app. Yeah, it is a really wonderful app, and for the most part, it's free. I don't think you have to pay for anything except if you want to. I think you have to if you want to subscribe to something. You can pay if you want to, but for the most part, it's free, and at least to get you the basics. I love it. I think it's a wonderful idea. If only they had that for computer programming languages, or you know. back in
Yeah.
the day they had books. They still have them now, but I do recall seeing like in the school library HTML for dummies or
Mm-hmm.
C++ or JavaScript for dummies. So basically I kind of feel like the apps these days that we have are those for dummies books that we used to have.
Yeah. And I think those books actually do still exist. Like every so often I'll go
Yeah.
into a library and like into the computer section and I will see those books, but most people just look it up on the internet,
Well,
which
that's
is
it. It's
yeah.
at your fingertips. We're so lucky. Back when we were just getting internet, it was Encyclopedia Britannica or the
Right.
Collier's encyclopedias. I had them. They were on my bookshelf, and I missed that a little bit, I have to say. I love computers. I love the technology that we have available to us, but I do miss having a book.
Yeah, there's just something about just pulling off one of the volumes of an encyclopedia and just starting to flip through it. I used to do that.
Yeah.
And even with like regular books, there's so many people, like myself included, who use e-readers or iPads to read.
Mm.
And it's wonderful, especially like in the pre-pandemic days, I used to travel a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it was great. I wasn't breaking my back trying to bring books on a trip with me.
Uh-huh.
But there is something about like actually like flipping pages in paper and it's
And the
comforting.
smell. Yeah. It is comforting.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm coming off
Yeah,
the back
that
of a cold.
library
I
book
just had to have
smell.
a sip of water then.
Oh, that's totally fine. I have my tea with me too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Tea or
Yeah.
tea?
Oh no, actual tea.
Actual tea. Okay,
No,
good. I've got
if I
two
have
tea
too many
bags in
quotes,
my
you know.
water. I don't know if people can see that. If they're watching, they can see there's a couple of tea bags.
Mm.
Just cold infusion, peppermint tea. Like I said, I've had a cold for a couple of weeks. Yesterday, I was completely deaf in one ear, in my left ear, which is really horrible because that's how I listen especially when I'm recording. And I had a few appointments yesterday. Even I had the phone up to my ear. I said, "I'm sorry, can you speak louder because I can't hear you properly." And actually, it was me. It wasn't them at all. So it was really terrible, and I didn't know why. And now this morning, I woke up, and I feel like the cold is coming back. So I thought I better get the tea and the vitamin C happening and try to shake it off.
Oh
It's
my God,
winter
like
here,
it was
so thank you. I hope so
right.
too. It's the season for it, though. I think it's just everywhere you go. I'm still wearing a mask everywhere.
Mhm.
And we are required to when we go to a pharmacy or to the doctors or hospitals or things like that. But our restrictions have been lifted quite a lot. But I still wear a mask. I go to the grocery store and wear a mask still and try to, keep as healthy as I possibly can. I cannot afford the time to recover from anything. This cold has really knocked me for a six. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, no gosh. It's hard too in the winter. Like that's when people like naturally, at least that's when
Yeah,
I naturally get sick or sicker.
that's
But
right.
yeah, it's hard. Like yeah, they've lifted the restrictions here too. So it's you do still need to wear a mask. Like if I live just outside of Washington D.C. So if you're going onto the metro or a bus or something like that, you definitely
Mm.
need to. Doctors' offices, you need to mask up.
Oh, yeah.
But most other places, like schools, they're not masking, and like
No.
it's masking optional. So,
Oh, is it?
um, like the school I work for,
Okay.
yeah, it's mask
Oh,
optional, and
Georgetown, of
there's a really
course,
big
it's
push to
local.
say like,
I didn't even put the two together then. That's funny. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about your daughter because she's an important part of your life. First of all, how did she go? How old is she? She's only young.
She turns 4 at the very end of this month.
Fantastic. Well, happy birthday
So
to
yeah,
her.
she's
How did she cope with pandemic being locked down and all the restrictions and things?
yeah. It's funny because I don't think she really remembers a pre-COVID world.
Mm,
So she was, goodness, I think she was 21 months when the pandemic hit and everything locked down.
wow.
And I got sent home from work. Like we shut down campus, and then a week later, her daycare shut down and just said like, you know what, we're just gonna close up shop for a while until it's safe again.
Yeah.
And at the time, we all thought, oh, you know what, it's only going to be a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then we'll be back and it'll be fine. And nobody anticipated this.
No.
But she didn't. It didn't really faze her. So I kept her home, and I was so naive back then. I was still working, but I was working from home. But I decided, okay, well, I have this not quite 2 year old here, and I need to keep her entertained, but I also need to work. So I'm going to make a schedule.
Ah,
And from 8 to 9, we'll have breakfast. And from 9 to 9:30, we'll do like our own little version of circle time where I'll teach her something. And I had the whole day planned out, and it worked for about a day. And then
wow.
the whole schedule just flew out the window. And
You go through a day. That's better
it
than some
was,
people
I
I've
mean,
heard.
that is true. And it ended up just being this giant free for all. But I mean, it was great. Like it was very stressful having her home and also trying to keep a full time job,
Hmm.
and trying to make us like not get sick. But
Yeah.
lockdown happened in the springtime for us. So March is our spring, beginning of our spring.
Yeah.
So like we would go outside, we'd go for walks. I decided to experiment with her and see if I could teach a 2 year old the alphabet, and I did, which was hilarious. So
Good.
she learned her ABCs, and we would go out for walks, and I would test her on the license plates of all the cars in our parking lot.
Great.
um, and then school opened back up uh, briefly, and then they had a couple of incidents with COVID. So we would go through this period of like school would be open, school would be closed, school would be open.
Oh, yeah.
But in the times when it was open, they were requiring teachers and students to wear masks. So I I told her, like,
Mm.
listen, everybody's wearing a mask. You have to wear a mask. And she took to it. And I think it's because she was so young that she thought, oh, well, this must be what people do. And that's fine.
Mm.
And it was just the right age for her to think it was natural and normal for everybody to be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I really feel for older kids who do remember that pre-COVID time.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why do I have to wear a mask now? Like, I don't know if that's what they're thinking. But I mean,
Absolutely.
they remember the before time, and it's hard.
I have a 15-year-old nephew. He turns 16 in just under a month. So he's at the beginning of August. He turns 16. And my niece is 12. She'll turn 13 in September. And yes, they didn't understand. For them, it was like, oh, yay, we get some time off school. And then it was desperation to go back to school eventually. So after... for in total, we had about 9 months where they didn't go to school. And it was huge. It was a really long time, and trying to do the homeschooling so that they don't miss out. But I actually felt as though they were learning a lot from being at home anyway. They learned about money. They learned about things that were important, getting out and doing your chores. And you still have to read the books and still try to encourage them to do things. But you know what? They're children only once. And it's important that although they have to learn, there are things they have to learn. It's important that they're children and that they don't lose that. If we think about people who have gone through scenarios where they're in war and things like that, and I personally have firsthand encounters with people. They are in my family. I'm one generation only away from them, who went through World War II. There was the Bosnian War. There's Lebanese conflict now. Those poor people in Lebanon. I mean, it's disgusting what these people have to go through. And I think about the children who are missing out on a life, period. The last thing they're thinking about is going to school. All they want to do is survive.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that you got your daughter out to learn her ABCs. And she took to it. I wondered, though, how is she going now? Everything is reopened and things are relaxing. So for her, this is very different. She's about to go to, do you do kindergarten there at 4 years old, is it, or 5?
Kindergarten starts at 5. So right now she's actually in it's not exactly a preschool. It's a Montessori school. So they're all ages, even up to elementary. But right now I have her in this classroom that's kind of combines preschool and kindergarten.
Okay.
And she likes it. It's interesting because she is very hesitant to go into the classroom.
Oh.
But when she is there, like her teachers say, like she has a blast and it's fine. But she is definitely very attached to me. And I think it is because a combination of like she was home with me for so long. And also it's literally just the two of us in our house. Like I'm a single mother. I don't have a partner. She doesn't have siblings. Like she is the one and only. So it really is the two of us. So when she's not in school, she is right next to me. And I see it even like when she's home, like she'll play sometimes by herself. But like a lot of times, like she's a very social kid. So like she'll want to play with me and like do a lot of pretend play. Or lately, and this is super exciting for me, she wants to help me bake. I love baking. So like she'll pull up a chair next to me and like climb up onto the chair next to the counter and like watch me bake something. She'll help put ingredients in, things like that. But like she definitely
Fantastic.
She is a social creature.
Love it. That's great.
Yeah.
And kids are resilient. Kids are more resilient. They can handle more than we give them credit for, I think, which is maybe a product of ourselves. It's a product of our own upbringing. We grew up in a different time, maybe. I don't know. But I do find that, especially with my nieces and nephews, they just adjust. They just go, oh, okay, that's what we're doing now. All right, we'll just get on with it. There's no sort of like, dragging them into the current moment. So they are resilient. And I guess being social helps as well. My nephew is a little bit isolated. He's a computer nerd. So he likes he likes the computer games. He gets on his Xbox and he likes to do the party things that they do. And I'm way out of touch. I need to get a little bit more, and I need to have a better clue, I think. But he loves that. And his friends that's what all of his friends do. His group of friends from school, they get together at school and they talk about the things that, the games that they're building. And when he was growing up, he was a real artist. He would create characters for games that he wanted to play, or characters that he wanted to see in the games that he was playing. And these artworks, they really were artworks from a 5-6-year-old, were so unexpected, which you've got to encourage that. So I love it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love to hear that your daughter is thriving though, and she's adjusting. But tell me about, you said you're single, you don't have a partner. And I think I read that's by choice.
Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, I was thinking, all right, well, I'm going to go that typical path of like finding a certain somebody and getting married and then having kids. And
yeah,
I never found that certain somebody. And it's like going through my 30s, I was thinking like, you know what? I don't really need that certain somebody. But like as I got into my later 30s, I was thinking like, I can live without a partner, but I'm going to really regret things if I don't have a kid. Like that was my focus.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that actually.
The later part of my 30s. And I'm like, sorry?
Sorry, we have a little bit of a delay, so anybody listening, they'll notice that. But I can relate to what you said there, where back in the day when we were younger, I thought the same thing. You find a partner, you find someone you want to be with for the rest of your life. And as I've gotten older, I've just thought, oh, actually, I don't need that. I don't need that. That's really important, to recognize that you don't need it. Yeah, it's nice to have somebody around every now and then, but I don't need to have that. But there are things, like you said, that you may miss out on. So you've obviously made choices which led to your daughter coming into your life. What did you go through to come to that?
I mean, it was something that was in the back of my head for a while. And then, like I would put it down and I would think, okay, well, when I was in my early 30s, like, okay, well, I still have time. Maybe I'll find a partner and do it the, I guess, more traditional way.
Yeah.
But as I got in my later 30s, I'm thinking like, all right, well, like not to use that kind of trope, but like my clock is ticking. And I don't know how much time I have left to really have a child and like for that to be a viable option for me. And like you were saying, would I like to have a partner? Yeah, sure. Like if I find the right person, yeah, that would be great. But it is not a necessity. But yeah, I absolutely wanted to have a child. And I started when I hit right about 37, I started like really looking into my options. And at one point I was considering, like, I did ask a friend of mine, like, hey, would you be interested in being a known donor for a child of mine? And we had some really deep talks about that. And we decided for the sake of our friendship, that was not a good idea for us.
Okay. Yeah.
So then I started looking at anonymous donors and eventually like went through all the testing. So when you go and have a child this way, like you have to go through a lot of testing just to make sure like your body is up for it, like everything is in working order and you're healthy and you can both conceive and carry a child to term. Like especially there's a magic number, like once you hit over 35 as a woman, they really want to make sure like they consider you quote unquote advanced maternal age. Which
is that what they call it there? My sister was called geriatric.
That term was used for me too. I think
it's so unfair though. Like What is that about? Women have a clock that they have to be mindful of. It's so unfair because men go around spreading their seed everywhere, for lack of a better way of putting it. I mean, that's not a nice way of putting it, but that's exactly what some men do. And I just find it so insulting. And I'm a male, and I find that insulting that it's so uneven. Yeah, the inequality is just, it's befuddling. It's so dazzling to me. I just find it really unfair that a woman has to think, or I try to use gender neutral terms, but somebody who was born with female reproductive organs has to think about, if they want to have a child, they have to do it by a certain point in their life. And then we look at other people. What was his name? There was a guy who fathered a child. He was like 70 something. It shouldn't be allowed. They should not be doing things like that. Terrible.
But it's the biology. Like, a lot of it is the biology. Like, you look at the female, like the female anatomy, and your eggs really do start going bad. Like, they have a biological expiration date, which is half the problem.
Yeah.
So you hit these magical ages, and I remember the doctor showed me all of these statistics. And the statistics was what really got me. So they have all of these statistics for how outcomes, like successful pregnancies, happen from like the 20 to 25 range, and then 25 to 30, 35 to 40. And then they do 40 plus, which
just
seems
40
so
plus.
grossly unfair to me. It's just 40 plus.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking, like, well, I was 40 when I gave birth to my daughter. But I, as a 40-year-old, am very different physically than a 50-year-old giving birth. And there are 50-year-olds giving birth. And I'm like, why did you stop there? Because when they realized I was going to be 40 and giving birth, they had me go through a whole other series of testing, including I had to go to a cardiologist to make sure my heart was still up to speed.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, like, okay, well, I'm a runner. I ran up until I was 31 weeks pregnant. I don't think my heart's the problem. I mean, maybe it is.
No.
I respect the doctors in saying, like, you know what, we need to cover all of our bases. And they really are doing their due diligence. But I'm like, it felt a little like there could have been a heart problem, to be honest. But like, it felt a little bit insulting. Like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But like, luckily everything was fine. And it was relatively smooth sailing for like a first pregnancy. Like, I didn't really have any issues. Like, I had a couple of issues where my daughter just liked to kick all over the place. And at one point she just kicked into my back, and I'm like, oh, that hurt. And then she
I will never experience that, Joni. I'm sorry. There's a delay. I keep thinking that there's going to be a pause, and then we talk over each other. I apologize. Sorry. No, it's okay. I think it's either this software that we're using. I'm not sure. It could be the internet, and I didn't switch over my internet before we started, so I apologize. We'll try to fix it up later, but there may be times we can't, and the video will show us talking over each other. But I'll never experience that. But you talk about that, and that must be amazing. Or did it gross you out? Did it freak you out that you have a person inside of you? Or
actually, not at all. It was the coolest thing ever. Like, I could feel her. At one point, I could see like her foot coming out of my stomach, which you'd think would be a little weird, but I mean, it was super, super cool.
Maybe for people looking on.
I know, right? Yeah, nobody could see it. But I could feel it, and I could feel
you could
it.
feel it.
I'm like, oh, hi, kid. But yeah, she would kick me so much. My friend gave her a pre-birth nickname that stuck. We called her Lord Kickass.
Oh yeah, cool.
So, this word, it was so appropriate for her. But yeah,
lovely.
It was a good pregnancy. It was pretty smooth sailing.
Did you? Sorry, it was a good pregnancy. I was going to say, did you have any expectations? Like you said, you didn't go through the quote unquote traditional way of doing things, and people who are having babies every day don't go through the things that you went through. So what were you thinking during all of this? Because there are people who just go and have babies willy-nilly, they don't have to think about it. You really were put through the ringer, so to speak. What did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I started my story by saying like it was a lot of testing at the very, very beginning,
Yeah.
which I wasn't expecting, but yeah, it felt like the beginning stages before I actually got pregnant, it was like endless testing. And I kept thinking, okay, like when do we get to the part where I can actually start
Where's
trying?
the fun bit? Yeah.
I know, exactly. Which is probably less fun than the traditional way, but it's still like you have to go through all of these tests, like you go through all of the physical tests, but then you have to go through this process of choosing a donor, and they have a literal database. There are several different banks that you can choose from, and I look through most of the bigger ones, and they just have these databases where you narrow down the results by whatever criteria you want. Like you can narrow down by heights, by
Wow.
race, by age, by I forget all the different criteria, but like there were some surprising criteria. So I'm like, okay, well, I have to narrow it down somehow. And I ended up just looking through these databases. I finally found one bank that had a couple of different options that I was really, really excited about. And then one night I just invited a friend over, and over some dinner and a bottle of wine, we just looked through my final three. And she helped me make that decision of like, who am I really going to go with? So I picked this donor, and you buy vials off the internet because this is how this works
okay.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, they store it for you because the sperm itself, it has to be frozen up until the point where you are going to try to conceive.
Right.
So I would work with my doctor, and we would figure out my cycle. And as soon as I knew that I was ovulating, I would make the appointment, have the sperm get released and prepped. And they do a whole lot of preparation, like unfreezing and washing and prepping, lots of that part. I didn't quite understand what they were doing. But I'm like, okay. And then you go, it's very unexciting. Like you go into a medical exam room, and then they
do their thing.
Sperm and do, like it's basically a big needle. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. It's a big needle.
No. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then they have something called the 2-week wait, where after that day where you conceive, you have to wait 2 weeks until you can start taking a pregnancy test to see if you're pregnant.
To see if it's true.
And it is the most agonizing. Yeah, it's the most agonizing 2 weeks ever, because you don't know, and you're feeling things inside of your body. And at one point, I went through a couple of different tries to get pregnant. And I remember, I think it was my second try, I started like having all of these like weird bodily reactions. And I was so convinced, oh my goodness, I'm pregnant. I'm totally pregnant. I was not pregnant.
Wow. Wow.
It's this like psychological mind game combined with hormones that just, it is not a fun 2 weeks.
Yeah, I bet it didn't sound like it was fun.
No, that part was less than fun. It's just so nerve-wracking. And then my fourth try, like I got pregnant on my fourth try. Which it felt like a lot for me, but there are some women who try for a year or more than a year.
Yeah.
And it's just like one after another, and I don't know how they do it. I have so much respect for the women who are taking that many tries and just keep on trying, because it's really a passion. Like, you want a baby and you will do anything to get that baby.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like the people who want the babies the most are the ones who just seem to have the most trouble, that they can't get pregnant. They don't seem to be getting, they have a loving home to give to a child. And here in Australia, we had an issue. Our government was paying people to have babies.
Oh my
So
goodness.
to increase the population for a certain period of time, it was back in 2000, 2004, 2005, I think. And so what they did was they paid you a baby bonus. If you had a baby during a certain period of time, you would be paid a baby bonus. And it was $7,000 tax-free money paid into your bank account as soon as you registered the birth of your child, and then you would get another bonus as soon as you'd taken them for their immunizations. Um, yeah, yeah. Your face says it all, because even to other people, it is nuts to think that the government would pay you to have a child. And so the issue here was, at the very beginning, of course, it was all very above board, but there were certain people who liked to take advantage of the fact that they would get a $7,000 bonus for having their baby. So now there are huge families that are in poverty. They are struggling because that money runs out eventually. It doesn't just keep coming in. Yes, they get money for free from the government if they don't work. And I say for free because it is for free. They don't pay into the system to get that money back, but they live with a check coming in per child until they go to school. Then the money reduces slightly. And this was the problem that they had. Once the money started reducing, we'll just have another baby, and another $7,000, another $800 every 2 weeks to look after the child. And they capped it at 5 children. They did cap it at 5 children,
Okay.
but still 5 children is a lot to be taken care of. And if you're not working, and I always said that I felt like it was wrong, because I could almost guarantee you that a very high proportion of those people didn't want to have children. It might not have been in their future to have children. They probably shouldn't have children, some of them. I guess I don't want to stereotype people, but there were people who maybe were into some things, who maybe had some addictions or vices, that they were using their $7,000. And you could always tell the people that had just had a baby, because they were the ones walking out. It was around the time of the flat screen TVs. And you always knew, you could always see them because they had 3 or 4 kids following behind them, and they were walking out of the stores with their big flat screen TVs. So, and I think that's a real shame, especially when I have a friend, her and her husband were trying so desperately to have a child, they just could not conceive. She had health issues. There were problems that she had that stopped her from being able to conceive properly. They'd gone through numerous miscarriages and, IVF treatment that just didn't work, and it was expensive. That's the other thing. It's so expensive. These people could just have children without thinking about it. IVF is gonna, if you don't have $200,000 in your bank, you're not having a child, and I think that's really unfair.
It is
Yeah.
awful. And I don't know how insurance really works in Australia, but like here, insurance really covers very little. Like if you're
Oh yeah, they don't
single
cover
and trying
anything.
to conceive, like you really, yeah, they don't cover anything here either. Like they'll cover you if you have, I forget how many, after X number of tries, I forget what X is, but after so many tries, then they'll start to cover you. But even if you're a couple, you have to prove infertility before they will start covering you. And all of those, like, proof is basically the trying. So if
Yeah.
trying for you means IUI or IVF, then all of those tries before insurance kicks in, that's all out of pocket. And
Yeah, for
people
sure.
will drain their life savings.
Yeah.
So between the tries, like the procedure itself costs money. The sperm is not cheap. Like the sperm is very expensive. I imagine the same for egg. If you're in a situation where you also need an egg donation, I never looked at that because I got lucky and my eggs were fine. But like for people who also need the egg donation, like eggs are not cheap either, and it's
well, look at the gay
hard.
couples, gay or trans couples, if they want to have children. For a gay couple, they also need to have an incubator. They need a womb to carry their child. They can't do it themselves. It's just biologically completely impossible. But if you wanted to go down that, imagine the money that people have to spend. I really feel for people that things like that shouldn't be so prohibitive in cost are, and then the things that should be prohibitive seem to be freely available to people. And I feel like that's such an inequality in our societies. And Australia is not that much different to the US, except that we have universal healthcare to a degree.
That would be lovely.
To a degree. There are still people who pay a lot of money out of pocket to be going to the doctors and having a child, for example. If you want to go to a private hospital, or if you want your choice of OBGYN, you have to pay out of pocket for those things.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a shame.
I mean, it is. But yeah, it's amazing how hard they make it. Like even for adoption, like if you want to go the adoption route, it is difficult. It is time consuming. I know people who have tried to adopt, and I know some who've succeeded and like they successfully adopted their kids, and it was great, but it was a lot of like time and money and effort. And I know other couples who went through the adoption, kind of went through the adoption route, and then just like it didn't work out, or they ended up getting pregnant, but I mean, even adoption is just an incredibly hard route. It's just unless you do it the biologically natural way, it's really hard having a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. But now fast forward nearly 4 years, end of August, 4 years old, and you have Sweet Little Me coming out. It's your book on August 1st. Is the book. It's in pre-order now. It's available to pre-order. Tell me about the book. What made you want to do this? Why another? It's a children's book, right?
It is. It is a children's picture book called Sweet Little You, and it's
Sweet Little You. Sorry, I said Sweet Little Me.
No, it's okay. But yeah, it ended up just being another passion project, to be honest. We have books all over our house. I love to read. My daughter loves to read. I got a ton of books at my baby shower. Just all of these like welcome baby books and different varieties of baby books, picture books, stories. And my daughter and I would read them. We read 1 or 2 books every night.
Wonderful.
So I started reading to her like day one. And I would read these books, and all of the welcome baby books over time, like we would just amass more. And I discovered, all of these welcome baby books, they all say like, we welcome you, and mommy and daddy are so excited that you're here. And all of these references to having 2 parents, and even the ones that are trying to be like that are more diverse, not trying to be, but are more diverse, and talk about like having same-sex parents, or it's always 2 parents. And I'm thinking, well, okay, where are we in this? And we also have a bunch of books that talk about donor conception, and from a kid's perspective, and they'll say like, hey, like, here is how I was conceived. I only have a mommy, and mommy went to a donor bank and got a donation and then went to a doctor. But we have a couple of those books, and I love those books. But when I started reading them to my daughter, she was 1.5, 2, and they would just completely go over her head, because they're kind of more advanced topics. And now that she's almost 4, she does understand it more and more. But I think a lot of that is because I've been reading her these books for like the last 2-ish years. So it got stuck in my head. Well, why are all of the books about donor conception geared to slightly older kids, which is fine. Like that needs to be there. And why are there all these baby books that say plural parents, and they have these plural parent references. Like, why isn't there a welcome baby book that just right off the bat says, hey kid, you have one parent. This is awesome. This is how you got here. Go us. And that
Yes.
that is the book that I wanted to exist, and that is the book that I wrote. So it's
Fantastic.
it's been a journey.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's
And how has it been received? Have you been showing people, or is it top secret until it comes out on August 1st?
A few people have seen like the whole thing. I've sent it out for reviews, and I got one very, very positive review back from one reviewer. I'm waiting for other reviews to kind of come in. My daughter has seen it. She has the very first copy of it. So I ordered some proof copies. And the first copy I wasn't super happy with, like the paper quality. I had like tactile issues with it. She loves that book, like that version of the book. She doesn't actually like the paper that I chose. She's like, I want this book. This is my book. So that is the book that is on her bookshelf. But my 4-year-old has seen it and she loves it. So that's my other endorsement. But yeah, I mean, I have sent it out, but reviewers always say, like, you know what, we will review it when we get to it. A lot of these reviewers are very, very slammed. So a lot of it is really just a waiting game for them to get to my book and then review it and then post a review. So I don't know how it's been received by like a large number of people. I mean, the very small number I've sent it to, they've liked it a lot, and that makes me very excited. Are you still here? Okay, Jesse just disappeared. I'm not sure if this is still recording. So I think I will just pause for a minute. Oh, hi. I saw. I wasn't sure what to do.
So what I'll do is I'll clip the starting bit just to explain to you that what you were saying, everything is fine because it's recording locally on your machine. So it will be uploading everything to the whatever it is, and because it uses artificial intelligence to tell who's speaking, it will be all on you anyway. So it's not, no one will even know that I'm gone. So
Except for the fact that I mentioned that you were gone because I was not sure what was
that's
happening.
okay. That's all right. I could cut the end off at the other bit. I don't know what it was, but you started to drop out, and I was just trying to make it look like I'm still here, and I could hear that you were speaking.
Oh, okay.
But then it was all gone. It was all out of there.
That's too funny. Yeah, it doesn't give me any feedback really. So it just said it was still recording. No. I'm like, okay.
It is.
Okay.
It's still recording, so I'll cut the little bit off the end, but otherwise everything should be fine. You are at 99% uploaded, and I'm back now. So
amazing. Oh, right.
Okay. I'll just give 5 seconds.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so reviews.
Reviews, yes, you were talking about that.
I was talking about reviews. So yeah, so like I said, I'm still waiting for a lot of these reviews to come back, but the few people who have seen the book have been very, very positive about it. I'm very excited about the text. I'm very, very excited about the illustrations. So I found this amazing illustrator. Her name is Lisa Wee, and she is phenomenal. Like she exceeded my expectations. I wasn't even sure what to expect, but I had some visions in my head and I shared them with her, and I shared my personal story with her. And we went back and forth a little bit about some of just the way that the characters are supposed to look, and some of the key pages. And then she just went to town, and the final product is so incredible, and I'm so happy with it. It
Good.
makes me happy
If
looking at
people
it.
if people go to Amazon, because it is a pre-order right now, but sometimes you said Goodreads before, which will tell people everywhere that they can buy it. But sometimes on Amazon there's like the little look inside thing. Is there anything like that people can have a look before?
Unfortunately, there is not, and I am trying
No.
to work through why. So
Oh,
I am
okay.
exactly. I am self-publishing the book, and I'm using
Hmm.
a service called Ingram Spark. And basically, what you do is you upload the proof version of the book, and you upload the cover. Um, and what it does, it will print the book for you. So it's the book is printed on demand, but it will
Okay.
also list the book with all of the major retailers. And it is
Ah,
up to the individual retailer to do what they will with that information. So
okay.
in Ingram Spark, I did say, please include a look inside. Feel free to put in the pages, like the first few pages, and have that be available. But it is up to Amazon to
Oh,
respect
I
that
see.
setting and upload those images. And as of the last
Ah,
time I looked,
yes.
they hadn't yet, which makes
Oh,
me
okay.
sad.
Well, it is sad.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a look because I didn't have a link even, so I'm going to have to search. I don't think I was given a link. I'll double check because I've had a lot of things that I've been looking at. So maybe I even looked and I didn't realize. But I make a point of saying I don't take notes, and so sometimes I might have looked at something and then in my head I know I'm super impressed with it, but then I try to recall little bits of information. But I'd love to have a look. So people, I encourage them to go by and have a look at Goodreads at the very least to see whereabouts they can find the book on your web. Do you have a website? You do, don't you? J Halabi.
Yep, it is jhalabi.com. So my first
Okay.
initial and my last name. And if you go to jhalabi.com/book, that is the page dedicated to Sweet Little You. And
Hmm.
it'll give you a description, a glimpse of the cover, and then all of the pertinent retail links, at least the ones that I've found so far. But you can also search for it on Goodreads. You can search either Sweet Little You or you can search my name because it's
Okay.
the only book I've written. So it'll be the only result there.
So far.
Um, yeah, so far.
The idea of this book is fantastic, and you're absolutely right. It always seems so very. What is that word that they use when they talk about the two parents? It's you've got a mummy and a daddy, and the books that, what do they call that? There's a term, and it'll come to me at some point, I'm sure. But nuclear.
Oh,
They
yeah.
they yeah. So that it always feels very nuclear that there's just this generic answer, and I wonder what is that? Why is that? Especially in 2022, nuclear is anything but the norm now. It isn't like that anymore.
Exactly. And there are a bunch of wonderful, wonderful books that address that for
Yeah.
kids that will say,
Yeah.
like, you know what, families come in all shapes and sizes. Like, it could be that nuclear family, it could be two moms, two dads, a
Yeah.
grandparent, an aunt, and uncle. And it does make a reference to a single mom or a single dad. But
Mm.
I really wanted something that was dedicated to the single moms by choice out there because there
Yeah.
are quite a number of us and that number is growing.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted a book where my daughter can read it and like really feel seen and really like see our family in it without
Yes.
making
Yes.
it
Some
like
representation.
huge like yeah, like I want representation, but I want natural representation. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I never want our style of family to feel weird or outsiderish. And there are so many opposing forces to that. So, like in her
Oh
school,
yeah.
and her school is wonderful, and her school is very inclusive. But her school, like the families that are in there, are primarily nuclear families. Like in her
Mm.
class, she is the only child with a single parent. Um,
Wow.
and I don't think she has noticed that, but
Not yet.
it is. Yeah, I mean, not yet, but like again, she's just barely not even four yet. at
Yeah.
some point she is going to notice.
Let's
And
talk about that journey, actually, because that's important. I think it's not just your daughter. Your daughter is going to be completely fine with where she comes from. That's the thing that we see all the time with children. I have personally witnessed children who come from these non-traditional style families with two moms, two dads, or just one mom, or they're living with their grandmother. I mean, way back when I was growing up, my grandmother had a friend and she was raising her granddaughter on her own. So that's another style of family. She had no representation. If you think back in the early 90s, this kind of thing was not represented anywhere, not in the media. We didn't even see gay people on TV back then.
oh yeah.
So it's not your daughter that I'm concerned about. What about the other kids? And do you feel like you could have a discussion with the learning institutions, let's say the school that your daughter goes to? What about getting the book into the school so that they are introducing kids at an early age to these non-traditional type families, maybe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I haven't had any conversations with like the kids of her age about
Yeah.
that, but my nephew, probably about a year ago, he's 8 now. But at one point he asked me, like, he just came up to me, we're having like a little family reunion, and he just asked me like, "Where's Amelia's dad?" Amelia's my daughter.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, you know." And I explained to him, like, like I didn't go through all the clinical parts to like a 7-year-old, but like, what, like, making a baby takes 2 ingredients, and there's an ingredient that comes from a mom, there's an ingredient that comes from a dad. I obviously have the mom ingredient, but I found somebody who donated the dad ingredient to me, and I don't know who this person is. And maybe one day Amelia will learn who this person is. Because she actually has that option. I specifically, one of the search criteria that I chose was a donor who would be willing to make contact with his children when they turn 18. Because that was good. That was something that was very important to me. Like, I want her to have, if she chooses to, she might say, "You know what, forget it, I don't want to." But I want her to have that option if she has.
There's an option.
Urge. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So I told him, like, maybe someday she'll meet him, but like right now we don't know who he is, and that's okay. And he's like, in typical 7-year-old fashion, okay, and just walked away.
I find that, I've seen that myself. I've actually had someone come up, a friend's child come up, and, I've been visiting, and she's come up and said, "Where's your wife?" I don't have any children, but where's your wife? Well, I don't have one of those. I don't know how to explain. I don't know what other people feel is acceptable to tell to their children. I don't know what they learn at home. But then that was already a while ago. Now my ideas have changed, and I feel like it's important to tell children the truth. If they're not my children, I'm still going to say it. It's not my responsibility to hide things from them. So, and I will tell them I'm actually gay. I don't have a wife. I don't have a husband either. But I prefer another man to be my partner. So one day I might have a husband. I'll never have a husband. The desire to be married is about that much.
I feel the same. Like I don't really have that desire to be married. I would not object to having a partner, like another human in my life.
Yeah.
But marriage seems, for me at least, unnecessary.
I feel the same. It's and it's because I'm studying law, so I did a family law subject, and seeing the origins of marriage and seeing how we have constructed this things socially, as a society, how we've constructed what marriage is. I don't feel like I need to be a part of that institution. I don't own anyone, and no one needs to own me. And that really is what it all came down to at the end of it. It was a contract between two families, and it was all financial, it all had a financial basis. And yeah, nah, that's okay. And why do you need that? I'm happy for anyone who wants to be married, but I don't want to be.
Yeah, ditto. I mean,
so no proposals, please.
I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, and marriage makes a lot of people happy, but I feel like marriage also makes a lot of people unhappy, and I think
miserable.
One of those people who would just not be happy in a marriage. Like I would want, like if I am going to be with a partner for life, I don't want to feel contractually obligated to be with that person. I want to be with them because I want to be with them.
That's right. And when you don't want to be with them anymore, it needs to be easy enough to say, okay, we've come to the end now. Because that's the other thing. I've spoken to psychologists and therapists and things like that, this mindset that you have to be with someone for the rest of your life is so damaging to people's mental health. You put yourself in this situation that it's not necessary to be in. You don't need to feel that way. And things change over time. Feelings change over time. So to be, like you said, contractually obligated to somebody, and then you feel like you're trapped, and how unhealthy. I just be with someone because you want to be with them. And if you want to be married, be married. That's fine. But, these days they don't marry like my grandparents did. They're 70 years they've been married, and that's all they've only known each other for their entire. It was a different time. Society wasn't like it is now. So I think it's great what you're doing. I think what you're doing with your daughter, how you're encouraging her to be strong, independent, self-aware, which is totally important. I mean, it's so important.
It is.
But other kids need to be socially aware too.
Yes. But yeah, like especially being self-aware, like it took me a very long time to really figure out who I am and be comfortable with who I am. That my hope for her is that it does not take her quite so long, and that she realizes who she is, whoever she wants to become, sooner than I did.
Yeah. I think because you've done that work, you've done that hard work already. You probably didn't have the same influences that your daughter is going to have. So for her, it's going to be a different experience, I think. So I don't think that that's going to be the same for her. And children these days are much more, I don't know, but my niece and nephew know things that I didn't know when I was their age.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it depends on the situation you grow up in too. Like I grew up in a like a very suburban area that was mostly homogenous. Like it was very, very, very white.
Yes.
And I live now in a place where there is so much diversity. Like I said, I live just outside of Washington, D.C. There are so many different cultures. Like there are so many different people that she can meet and have so many different experiences and see so many different perspectives that it really broadens your worldview when you have that kind of exposure. And I'm so excited for her. It's
she's so lucky.
It's going to be this really cool adventure of her childhood, and
absolutely
to be able to see that and to experience it with her. Like I'm going to be experiencing as kind of like an adult outsider, but still, like I'm so excited for her. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hope that it works out well. I'm sure that it will. And with this book, I encourage everybody to go and have a look at it. And even if you are not from that family unit, even if your family unit is different, I feel like it's an important book. That's why when I read this, I read the one sheet and I thought we have to talk about this because it is important for everybody to see what is outside of their own little bubble that they live in. There are other bubbles that we're going to come into contact with. And it is important that we are respectful, mindful, aware of the other bubbles so that, these days we just need to be a little bit more accepting. And it's a long road, I think. It's sad that in 2020 we have to even say that. We should have been evolved by now.
I thought the future would be so different, and that is a much longer conversation. Yeah,
yes, yeah.
A lot of the things that are happening in this country, it's heartbreaking.
Oh, look, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do feel for you. I would love to have you back, Joni, especially after the book has come out. I'd like you to come back and talk about how it's going. And I feel like I just have this feeling that you've got another book in you. Your daughter has a whole entire childhood, a whole life ahead of her. And I actually think that your perspective is exactly what the world needs.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I would love to be back. I have had such an amazing time speaking with you tonight.
Thank you. I'm so glad. That's exactly what this show is all about. We all come together and we talk about things that are important, but sometimes, I don't know if you heard any of my other episodes, but there's some shenanigans that go on. We have a good time, and I like to enjoy myself. But that's the variety of life, isn't it? It's all about sharing our experiences with one another, and I thank you for sharing yours with us.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Joni. Everybody go and check out the website. Have a look on Amazon, Joni Halabi, jhalabi.com/book, and you will find Sweet Little You. Get it now. Oh, it's a pre-order, but it releases on the 1st of August. Don't wait too long.
Yes.
Thanks, Joni.
Thank you.